Snatcher is a sci-fi adventure game and the second game written and directed by Hideo Kojima after the original Metal Gear. Originally released for the PC-88 and MSX2 in 1988, it wouldn't see a North American release until 1994 on the Sega CD. While this game definitely has similar story beats and tones in relation to his other games, does this game hold its own amongst other Kojima titles, and more importantly, does it hold up today? The original version of Snatcher was developed by a small team named Team Metal Slave. The development took roughly 2 to 3 times the amount it took to make an average game at that time. Hideo Kojima, whose only major title up to this point was Metal Gear, served as the game's planner in addition to writing the story. One other notable member of the team was Naoki Matsui. He directed the first 2 Nemesis games, which are known to be part of the Gradius series. Kojima also led the development for the PC Engine CD port of the game, but had no involvement in any future versions. While we obviously played the Sega CD version, which includes the third act, the original version of the game did not. Kojima originally planned for the game to have 6 acts, but with this being overly ambitious for the time, he was forced to cut it down to only 2 acts for the original release. This resulted in the game ending with a cliffhanger. However, the third act was added in all releases after the PC Engine version, with Kojima borrowing ideas from Japan-only spin-off SD Snatcher. The English version of the game would add more gameplay to the third act, aka the shooting scenes, because the first version of Act 3 in the Japanese release mostly featured no gameplay and required the player to just watch the story unfold. The intro and the ending were also expanded upon for this release. This version of the game was ported from the PC Engine version of the game, and the translation team was led by Jeremy Blaustein, who is famous for translating games like Metal Gear Solid and Castlevania Symphony of the Night. He currently has been translating all of the Pokemon anime since 2003. This port also added light gun support for the shooting sections. As with many games, the translation also led to a good bit of censoring as well. Nudity was taken out, and a character's age was changed from 14 to 18 due to a shower scene involving that character. They changed some other minor things as well, such as violence involving a dog, a character eating buffalo meat instead of whale meat. The Snatcher's naked appearance was also made to look less like a Terminator, and the time the game takes place was shifted 5 years to coincide with the release of the English version. One other change was the bar scene in Outer Heaven. In the original version of the game, the bar was populated with parodies of famous sci-fi characters, but was changed to avoid copyright issues. Instead, it's populated by references to Konami characters from games like Castlevania and Contra. When Snatcher was finally released for the Sega CD in 1994, it's estimated to have only sold a couple thousand copies. This can be attributed to the overall failure of the Sega CD and the fact that Sega discontinued the add-on right around the time of the game's release. While being critically acclaimed and currently a cult classic, one can only imagine what would have happened if the game had gotten into the hands of more North American gamers. Snatcher features a simple interface that is very similar to other early adventure games. The game is played from a first-person perspective, with the bottom half of the screen always being reserved for either menu options or dialogue. The player can also save at any time using Robot Companion Metal Gear, which is a necessary feature for this roughly 8-hour story. The story is the main focus of Snatcher. It borrows from other sci-fi greats like Blade Runner and Terminator amongst others. On June 6, 1996, a chemical weapon known as Lucifer Alpha was released into the atmosphere. This weapon killed about 80% of the population in Europe and Asia, resulting in the death of half of the world's population. 10 years later, the contaminated area becomes habitable again, and Lucifer Alpha mutates into a non-lethal form. This event is referred to as the catastrophe. 50 years later, realistic artificial life forms known as snatchers began appearing in man-made island Neo Kobe City and are killing its residents and replacing them in society. Nobody knows why this is occurring or where they come from. You play as Gillian Seed, a member of the Snatcher task force known as Junker, who is also suffering from amnesia. Gillian and his wife Jamie both suffer from this, and because of that, they don't remember their relationship and they rarely see each other. It's the player's goal to track down Snatchers, as well as solve the mysteries of Gillian's past. Throughout the game, you'll investigate murders, interrogate people, and explore different areas to help uncover the larger mysteries at hand. All of the game's characters are very dynamic and play integral parts to the story. Gillian's robot companion Metal Gear definitely stands out, but again, all of the characters are great. Because Snatcher places an extremely heavy emphasis on its story, we can't go into every single detail or else we'd be here all day. but just know that this story is very engrossing, with lots of twists and turns that really kept us guessing what was going to happen next. The last act features the longest story sections of the game and gives you all the details you need to know regarding the world, Gillian's past, Snatchers, and more. We don't want to spoil this story for you, so if it sounds interesting, go check it out for yourself. As you can see, the pixel art here is absolutely gorgeous. The graphical style of the game absolutely holds up today. Like other adventure games, everything from the characters to the environments are very detailed and distinct, giving the game a unique look and feel. The game features more gore than you would expect from a game like this, but it's tasteful enough that it's never an issue. The music in this game is okay. That's really the best way that I can put it. Recurring songs that loop throughout the game during certain gameplay sections can really drive you crazy. The music is not bad at all, but with no standout tracks, it becomes very annoying by the end. There is also a high amount of voice work in this game, and it's all very well done. Every major character, as well as some of the smaller ones, have a ton of voice dialogue, and this significantly ups the game's production value. I never got tired of watching cutscenes, and especially on consoles, there was nothing else like this at the time. When it comes to gameplay, Snatcher definitely has some problems. Being an adventure game with visual novel elements, it never really feels like you're doing a whole lot in the game. Now, we know this is an aspect of these kinds of games, and this is not really a complaint from us. You just shouldn't go into this game thinking it's going to be filled with action. The gameplay is heavily text-based, and at most times you'll have the option to look, investigate, and move in any given area. You also have talk and ask options when you go into dialogue. There are also other contextual options at certain parts throughout the game, like smell or search whenever it's needed. While this certainly isn't a bad system, it has one huge flaw. At many different points throughout the game, to progress, you simply just have to look and investigate every single thing in a certain area multiple times. We got stuck on several occasions not knowing what to do next until we looked at a walkthrough and were told to do this. The game gives no indication that you need to do these things 2, maybe even 3 times, and it gets frustrating when you're just trying to get the next scene to trigger, but can't remember if you missed anything, so you have to go through every single option again. After a few instances of this, we began systematically going through each option multiple times rather than doing so organically in terms of importance to the scene, which really killed the atmosphere for us at some points. It's a problem when you know exactly what you have to do, but are forced to examine specific items like a table or a plant for no reason just to progress. Metal Gear can be accessed at any time to make phone calls and to save. You can also get into your car at any time to travel to the game's many different locations. This game has one other problem though, and that's the shooting sections. While I can tell what they were trying to go for here, these are frustrating and at times straight up bad. They were initially designed to be played with a light gun, which makes sense, but with a controller you have to move so quickly and mash buttons, which is not fun at all. Luckily the game doesn't feature too many of these, but towards the end of the game, they become more and more frequent. I commend them for trying to mix up the gameplay and add some variety, but I don't think they needed to. I would rather see a cutscene showing me what happened, because every time I got into one of these frustrating shooting sections, I wanted to stop playing and take a break. Even though the game has a few issues, I think the immensely detailed and engrossing story more than makes up for it. It's a shame that this game was never brought to modern consoles. The only way to play it legally is to get a Sega CD and spend upwards of $400 on a copy. Konami needs to release this game on modern consoles and introduce it to a whole new generation of gamers. While this game is not for people who prioritize gameplay over story, we believe it's a flawed masterpiece and definitely holds up to the test of time.